very much for coming in this assembly and meeting. We are in the frame of School of Mutation that is promoted by IRI, this Institute of Radical Imagination, that is a sort of collective assembly composed by artists and activists and researcher and also director of cultural institution or in a way by people engaged in bottom-up or alternative institution, art institution. We started this project of the Institute more or less 2 years ago, and we started also to travel, especially in south of Europe and in this Mediterranean zone, in order to understand in the territories what was the political agenda and the practices going on in this period. And when the pandemic and the COVID crisis started, we, of course, also in the Institute, started to have online meetings. And in this condition, we thought to launch this School of Mutation that in this moment is mainly online, but probably we really would like to open up a self-educational zone, and we thought to start to open meetings on what we are experiencing as important issue, no, in the art field and in the political sphere. So we are doing meetings in the School of Mutation around some topics. For example, this idea to conceive alternative art institution, or what is the future of art institution, and then we have another iteration about what does it mean right now, this care sphere. And then there is this iteration regarding universal basic income and UBI, and other iteration like the one on militant cinema and militant image. So, but this is quite open, and for sure, apart from this online condition, we would like to use this time in order to do something useful. And concerning this UBI, Art for UBI iteration, we are proposing this space because, in our opinion, this universal and unconditioned basic income is a very important struggle nowadays, and we are understanding that also probably we need this international like gathering, because there's many reflections and things going on locally or on the national levels, but I think right now is probably one of the first meeting about universal basic income and art that I attended. So I really would like to use this time in order to like share, first of all, many points of view, and maybe to open up, this is our proposal, a unique front on the European level, at least, rethinking the wealth redistribution and what is the UBI challenge nowadays. So we invited many of you because you are more or less what we know in the very first step on an international level about this topic. Probably one of the suggestions of today is also how to dialogue on UBI, but also maybe how to open up a front-end agenda, also enlarging this network. Okay. So on top of this chat, I pasted a link, a Google Doc link, because in the last days, me and Marco wrote down a first list or grid about what could be maybe a starting point reflecting on Art for UBI, for an Art for UBI manifesto. I have to say, many of these points are also fed by what we are reading, also by your personal experience and context. So I would like, first of all, in this introduction, maybe to read this list that maybe is a tool not to comment, to change, or to enlarge, and I propose that could be also like a first guideline for this meeting. So, in order to think about an Art for UBI manifesto, first of all, we would like to state that universal and unconditional basic income is the best measure for the art and cultural sector. Second, do not call UBI all the measures that are not a minimal monthly income for survival. So it has to stay up to the poverty threshold. Third, UBI frees especially the time. This means freeing everyone from the blackmail of precarious labor. Point 4, UBI is unconditioned, is not conditioned to meritocracy, penalties, or the ethic of labor. Point 5, UBI is not a social safety net or a reform of welfare for unemployment, but is a minimal recognition for the invisible reproduction labor. Point 6, UBI states that waged labor is no more the unique and main paradigm for wealth and liquidity redistribution. This model of waged labor is no more sustainable. Point 7, stopping the blackmail of precarious job means the power to say no. Transfeminist and decolonizing perspective teach us to say no to all the invisible extractive modes of exploitation, especially in the art sector. Point 8, UBI states a right to intermittence, a right to stay also outside the grid, not being 24 hours available. Point 9, UBI means a redistribution of wealth, refusing the pyramidal scheme of bureaucracy and grants, and all the system of social control of the contents. Bureaucracy is a vampire of artists' energies and time, turning them into managers of themselves. Point 10. We, as artists, are not interested in defending a guild or a category. We are not interested in pretending to have a social privilege or to feed this elitarian image of art in society. Point 11. Art health is directly rooted in a healthy social fabric. Demanding as an artist a UBI is the most powerful gesture for a real taking care of the society. Point 12. UBI has the power not only to free ourselves from the blackmail of the precarious job, but also from this capitalistic production mode that exploits the planet. UBI is another cosmological technique and a means for climate justice. Point 13. Where does the money for UBI, so unconditional and universal basic income, comes from? UBI means a critique to the existing taxation system on the European level. Financial transaction, digital platform extractivism, liquidity and money creation beyond debt are the three untouchable points that we have and we need to rethink. 14, UBI is also a school of redistribution. For the many art collectives and communities that are rethinking how to generate a self-managed mutual aid, collectivizing incomes and opening up the access to unconditioned liquidity. So, especially the last point is very important, but because in our opinion, we have a general rethinking of what the governance is doing in terms of redistribution of wealth. So the governance, it means on the national level government and on the European level. But on the other side, we know that, especially in art practices, there's a lot of experience that are rethinking how to share wealth. And this also in terms of relationship and self-education is a very strong tool also in order to rethink how we live together. No? And so this bottom-up capability to rethink how to stay together, and this fighting for a different governance of the redistribution of wealth on the political level are a double line that we would like to keep together, no? Also in this manifesto. So I hope that with this first list, maybe there's a lot of points we can discuss, and probably for sure all the intervention that we are opening after this introduction will go deeper in many of these points. So I would like to invite as first intervention Andrea Fumagalli, that is a friend and an Italian activist around UBI. He's also part of BIN in Italy, that is the main organization discussing and promoting universal basic income in Italy, and is an economist and dedicated a lot of his life on this issue. So please, Andrea, I would like to give you the space.
Thank you, Emanuele. Thank you to everyone for this discussion that I think is quite important, because the issue of the basic income is nowadays becoming very spread. But we have to say that there is a sort of maybe big confusion about what idea of basic income is suitable in order to create a anthropological, we can say, social and economic context in which some activity like arts can be recuperate, can say, that degree of freedom and self-determination that in many occasions has been lost. There is you know that we are facing a process of commodification of art. That is a topic that we don't need to discuss now, and when we talk about commodification, we mean the fact that artistic work, or it's better to say nowadays artistic labor, because there is a conceptual difference between labor and work. And we talk about labor when this activity is inside a process of capitalistic valorization. We can talk about work when there is a sort of excedence and alternatives to the process of capitalistic subsumption. So we needed to be careful, I think, about the proposition of basic income. And I think that the point stressed by Emanuele is a quite good departure point about to make a sort of political program, political project, in order to free the people from the blackmailability of the needs, in terms of precarious job, in terms of unemployment, in terms of imaginaries, in terms of cultural mainstream dominance, etc., etc. So I would like to stress your attention about, in order to better define the concept of basic income as I intend, but with a lot of other people, because that is a discussion that is lasting since a couple of decades, we can say, minimum. So, I want to stress about two parameters that I think cannot be discussed. They are fixed points able to make the difference with other concepts and meanings of basic income, or guaranteed income, minimum income, and so on. The first one is unconditionality. That means that basic income is a primary income. What does it mean, primary income? Means that is a sort of remuneration of an activity that is able to produce value, but this activity at the moment in our society, in this phase of biocognitive and platform capitalism, is not recognized and therefore certified. When we say that basic income is a remuneration, we have to take in account the structural change that occurred in the way of production modes and the transformation in the labor markets. Nowadays, we know very easily, because we already had the opportunity to discuss about these items, but in a very, very briefly, we can say that nowadays the main route of valorization is life itself. Life is not only put to value through labor, a certified activity, but nowadays, what is the novelties of the last 10 years of this millennium is that life is put to value in a direct way, without any kind of intermediation that is more or less certified by a juridical status, we can say. That means that when life is put directly to value, that means that we are witnessing a sort of unpaid activity. And nowadays, the share of unpaid activities, more or less voluntary, sometimes called free, but I prefer to call them unpaid, this is much clearer, is very much increasing. And the artistic labor from this point of view is very paradigmatic, because there is a, I'm not an artist, I am a poor and sad economist, so completely outside. But we can imagine, I think, that the artistic life produces a result that is the fruit of a lot of time, a process of learning, a process of networking, where all the human faculties are used and are in a synergic way utilized. But the result is that the paid part of this labor is just the final result, without taking into account all the previous labor, the previous work that is necessary to do in order to get to obtain a result in terms of any artistic context. That means that there is a part of the life that is completely not considered. That is just an example, but this kind of example can be enlarged nowadays to a lot of activities that has to do with the human life, with the use of social media, with the diffusion of social cooperation, with the spread of a type of product organization based on fluxes and not only on stocks, as it was in the last century. And this activity, this flexible way of production, is able to capture, sometimes to expropriate, sometimes to dispossess what is our willing to live and to have a good life. So we are all inside this kind of mechanism. From this point of view, basic income is the certification, the recognition of this capacity to produce value that is absorbed and captured by a minority. If the example of the social media is quite clear, it doesn't need to be explained. So if a basic income is a primary income, that means is a tool of remuneration, it enters not in the stage of redistribution of income, but is a tool of distribution of income. I think that this point should be stressed. In the different points that Emanuele read before, this point I will change all the time there is a redistribution in distribution. That is a conceptual difference that is quite important, because if basic income is a tool of income distribution, that is at the same level of the other tools of distribution, that is labor income, wage and other way to remunerate income, profit and rent. And now we have to add profit, rents as a remuneration of a property, as remuneration of entrepreneurial activity, wage in a very rough way as a remuneration of certified labor activity, and now we have to add basic income as remuneration of the capacity of life to become productive of value. That is a point that should be. And if we started to reason in this way, of course, by definition, basic income is unconditional. We don't need to prove to have a merit to receive a basic income, because we have already done. We already given. And the basic income is a way to exit from the modern form of slavery from this point of view. And that is the first point. I try to go fast in order to not to leave room to other intervention. The second point is, so the first point is basic income as remuneration and not as a piece of assistantship. And the second point is that basic income should reach a certain level in terms of amount of money that in relative term, according to the situation, according to the territories, etc., 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 is able to be enough high to allow the people to have the freedom to choose and to self-determine themselves. That is very clear written in the points declared by Emanuele before. And that is very important. And that means that, of course, the best situation and to fix the level of basic income in relative terms, not in absolute terms. And normally we can have minimum, according to some studies, the minimum level of basic income should be at the level of the relative poverty threshold that varies from situation, from territory to territory, and is in relative term because if the income distribution is going to change, of course, this threshold move, and the basic income level should move at the same way. That is the minimum, of course. It is the pavement. And relative poverty is different from absolute poverty, but I don't enter in this distinction. Of course, we hope that the level should be higher than the relative poverty threshold, but that will be the result of a strong conflict about the idea of a new welfare in which basic income is one of the main pillars, but not the only one, of course. If we talk about this kind, if we agree with that, that means that it's possible that there is a sort of contradiction between the U of UBI that has to do with unconditionality and the U of UBI. Here there is a little bit confusion. That means universal. Sometimes UBI is called universal basic income. Sometimes it's called unconditional basic income. Because according to the economic situation, even if we agree in the fact that the means of financing this kind of basic income should be found in a certain type of monetary policy, for instance, through the slogan, I don't enter in details of quantitative easing for the people, for instance, or through a reform of the fiscal policy, maybe towards, if we talk about Europe, because we are in Europe, about the possibility to build up a sort of roadmap towards a common European fiscal policy. Europe has a unique monetary policy, but as we know, we have different and fiscal policy at the national level with the risk of fiscal dumping. That happens if we look at the situation in Holland, in Netherlands, Luxembourg, and so on. and then, of course, there is a possibility to get the three way for the basic income to be financed can be the new forms of taxation about the highest and enormous profits that the new forms of platform capitalists are able to create. And of course, in this case, we have to think at supranational level. And that's the European level, it's the minimum level, supranational that we have to talk. Theoretically, we have to think at a global level. All right, if we consider this kind of reform and we are able to finance a fund for a basic income, in any case, if we look, maybe that in some country, the situation is different. But if we look at my country, in Italy, the possibility to use all this kind of amount of money that we can estimate, according to some studies, in about 55 billions of euro, only for Italy, and we want to distribute the amount of Italy to the 45 million inhabitants of Italy that a juridical status. Of course, here there is a discussion why only the people with a certain age and not to the kids or to the children, but we are going to open other questions that I don't want to analyze. But it's quite important, even this issue. But if we consider this example, this amount of money, if you make some count, is more or less about 1,200 euros per year to each one. That means more or less a little less than 100 euros per month. Nowadays, okay, that is a theoretical principle, a philosophical principle. Is good, it's perfectly correct that the basic income should be universal, because everyone, every living human being is part of the production of wealth. And even the richest one, even Jan Bezos, probably spent some life that during producing value in a not certified way. But Bezos then is able to gain billions of dollars with his certified activity. So, of course, this kind, if we go on with the Italian example, if we receive more or less 100 euro per month in a very optimistic view, of course, the possibility to free ourselves from the blackmaility of precarious activity, of needs, doesn't exist. And I think there are no the condition for a self-determination of the people. And to have the guarantee of the right to choose, that is one of the basic rights for a democracy, in an effective way, not only written on a chart in a potential way. But it's possible to have all the necessary means able to practice this right to choose and to say no, because part of the choice is even to say no, not only always yes, of course. So I prefer, if we have to choose between unconditionality and universal, for my opinion, I prefer a UBI that is unconditional basic income, even if not universal. We have to be realistic about this kind, of course. Because for me, it's more important to give the possibility for the people that have lower income, that are under the threshold of relative poverty, to go up, to reach minimum this level, in order to increase the potentiality to self-determine and to be free in their life. And that is more important for me than to give to everyone the same amount of money that is too low in order to allow this kind of conflictual perspective, because we are reasoning in political terms. To allow people to be free is a potential possibility to arise social conflict in order to change the way in which this kind of production system is nowadays organized. From this point of view, last point, because I've just spent all my time, I think that starting from these premises, we should make a sort of how can I say, a sort of clear point, the idea that we have to fight for a basic income that is independent on any kind of labor contracts, labor categories. For instance, I don't like that there is a campaign for a basic income for artists only, or there is a basic income for care activity, or there is basic income for other typologies of labor activity and so on. We have to fight for a unique basic income, because all the people, even if in differentiated ways, are facing the same problem of to be jailed inside precarious activity, unemployment, lack of income. And so even if we think that we are free from the cultural way, because we have an unorthodox education, something like experience and something like that, then we are not able to transform these alternative cultural ideas in a practical way, in an experience, and so on. That is a way how to change the situation nowadays. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this very thoughtful intervention. Before going to the next guest, just one methodological suggestion. It's our fault we didn't tell it in advance in the opening. So, since we are 7 invited speakers, plus there are more people in the room, I would suggest that we keep our interventions in the first round in the 10 minutes each. So I will kind of signal when the 10 minutes are gone. But I mean, Andrea, thank you very much, because you raised many important
That was the privilege of to be the first.
No, but also we didn't tell it. We didn't tell it. So
no, I could imagine that I profited more time. I apologize for that.
Don't worry. No, it was very interesting. So our next guest is Anna Cerda, and Anna Cerda.
Sorry, Marco, because I wrote in the chat.
Sorry.
Because I would suggest, maybe if Anna agree, to maybe
have Wouters first.
Shift having Wouters first, because he has a problem of time, and if you agree, and Wouter, are you there? I would like to give the intervention to you, and representing also state of art from Brussels, that maybe also having a different point of view about the cultural policies and art policies in Belgium, and maybe also understanding your debate about how to foster this mutual aid in between our communities. So please.
Yes, I have to excuse in advance. I'm on a bad Wi-Fi in the pub, so it's with some music that you hear. I hope the Wi-Fi will hold here. I take it rather short because I don't have big ideas yet on the universal income, but maybe I can share a little bit the situation in Belgium. State of the Arts is a platform, an open platform, mostly for artists and cultural workers, that was built 6 years ago, after we had a new government in Flanders. That's, let's say, is more to the neoliberal idea. And let's say one of the main focus points of this platform is to think about fair practice in the arts. What is it more than just like getting money for what you have done as an artist? It's also ecological behind. It was like the main focus. But last year we had another government on. Let's have between of September, it was the first decision of this. A lot of artists so discussions.
Sorry, Wouter is I don't know if it's only for me, but there is a problem of a connection. We really are not following what you are saying.
Walter, we really can't hear you. You come and go, but mostly we don't hear you.
Yeah, but I propose that I just shut up, and then it has no use.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, we can try to cut off all the video. Maybe we can understand if could be better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead, try.
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know what you all heard. Sorry, I think it's better just to pass on to the next speaker. I don't think it will work.
Yeah, now it's not so bad. I mean,
Okay.
if you want to try, and then I very soon let you know. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, State of the Arts is an open platform for artists and cultural workers. It's not this typical federation with members. It's more an open discussion and mobilization and protesting platform for artists, mainly focused on the topic of fair practice, which to us is more than just a money question. It's also an ecological question. It's also a question about inclusivity. And it was built 6 years ago. But you feel that since 1 year we have a new government, and their first decision was to cut the project subsidies in Flanders by 60%, which meant that that was even before Corona, which meant that many artists, like even more than before, felt that yeah, we should try to find like new ways of providing social security for artists. And I think the whole COVID crisis even stressed this need even more. So I think that there is an interesting atmosphere also in Belgium to really rethink yeah, the way we are paid producing. And I believe that the universal income could be an interesting yeah, way to search on. There is not, we're just like in the beginning of it. I would like to start a working group thinking and reflecting about it, how to implement it in the Flemish art scene. And I agree that it's necessary to have it much more larger than just the art world. But the question is also how do you start in a way? Can the art sector be a kind of training field for a universal income in other sectors too, or should we aim for yeah, a very large basic income for everyone from the first step? I think especially in arts, it's interesting to think about it because it can, I think, change two things. The power relation that we also have in are you still following?
Yeah.
Okay. The power relation that you also have in Belgium, and I guess in every European country, is that between institutions that have like structural subsidies and then yeah, individual artists. And with a basic income, I think you can change this power relation a little bit in favor of individual artists. And I think another interesting possible effect of a universal basic income is kind of transmission from art as a product to art as a process, which I feel I'm an art critic myself. I see a lot of yeah, changing in visual arts, but also performing arts, where it's not only about what you make, but what you do in a way. And I think the universal basic income is a much better way of financing this transition or change. And then, yeah, COVID came, and it's a special day today because yesterday in the Belgian Parliament there was a law voted for support measures for artists in Belgium that work with short contracts. And after 4 months of the lockdown, they were still not helped. Some artists, we think it's 4,000 or 5,000 artists in Flanders and maybe 10,000 in Belgium have been living without almost any income for months. So we have been yeah, fighting and lobbying with State of the Arts to solve that problem. It took a lot of time to convince and make politicians understand what was the problem. But yesterday evening, they finally voted a law or like a support measure till the 1st of January, where artists that are still not helped by all the other measures that we have, to have a kind of, yeah, basic unemployment help. I think the most important thing of what I want to say is that we are really interested to stay in touch. If this is the beginning of a platform to exchange on the idea of a universal basic income, we would be happy to stay in touch and try to build a kind of group also in Belgium to yeah, raise this idea and connect also to those who already even in Belgium have a lot of experience in this. You feel that the time is ready for it in a way, more than it was like 1 year ago and 5 years ago, because the precarity is not only theoretical anymore. It becomes really a real practical issue. Yeah, I think I keep it till this. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Wouter. Thank you for your speech, and you gave me a good assist in order to introduce the next guest, whose name is Anna Cerda. And you, Wouter, spoke about the necessity to rethink the production system, not only the art production system, but the overall production system in the midst of this COVID crisis. And so I think Anna Cerda can give us a really interesting point of view. She is a cultural worker. She has been working in the cultural field for the last 20 years, mostly in contemporary art and music, both collaborating with big and small institutions. She is part of a cooperative based in Barcelona. And she's here, we invited because her cooperative promoted just 1 month ago or so, a very, very, I think, interesting and advanced manifesto on the possibility that art people basically support UBI. And the title of the manifesto, let me just read the title, is People Working in Culture for Universal Unconditional Basic Income. Lots of interesting points. But there is one, the beginning, that I think it's very interesting. The idea that the best thing for art is to have UBI, which is exactly the opposite neoliberal the opposite to the neoliberal commonplace that with UBI, basically artists and culture producers get lazy, while like for the neoliberal point of view, the only regulator, let's say, of art is the market and must be the market. So can you tell us a bit more about the Manifesto and the work that you're doing in Barcelona with the cooperative? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here and to listen to all of you. And of course, I'm learning a lot, and I will pass all I can listen and learn to my friends and my colleagues in the cooperative. That is not even born officially. We were about to sign the papers just before the lockdown. So we are almost there, but we are working anyway. You know, the arts and cultural people, we used to work even if we are not born. So yeah, I think that your point is very important, is what led us to write this, because this question about the basic income is something that is often discussed in our meetings and activities. We are going to be a cooperative that comes from an institution, an initiative called Indigestio, means indigestion, something that you cannot process. And we realized that there was like a kind of big community around the activities that we from Indigestio, who is just a company in legal terms, and that we were like a community or group of people that we wanted to share and support this kind of events, activities, and things we do that mainly are thinking and talking and sharing about what do we think about culture and other ways to make culture or understand culture that is not the mainstream one. So when the lockdown was started here in Spain, that was by mid-March, well, we started, of course, as all of you, to talk through our screens and so on, and we came along that we would like to share some nice moments, and we started to make like aperitivos, as you say in Italian, Saturdays or Sundays at 1 or 12, just having some drinks together, but not together. And the thing that was in our heads was this one, the UUBI, because for us it was important to stress both universal and unconditional. It's very interesting, the possible debate, and yes, we said that and also I'm sure you remember those first days of lockdown were like a stress of artists and cultural agents putting content online and just like saying, oh, you can listen to this, you can watch that, you can review, and it was like impossible with only 24 hours a day to enjoy all that magnificent content that the cultural world was so nice to share with the rest of the world. So we thought that there was like that we were in the same loop of overproduction, of not being able to stop or say no, or just to take a breath, or just be lazy. So we started from that point, and in this aperitivos we started like putting ideas together. And for us it was very, very important, crucial to make clear that we were not asking anything for the cultural or the art sector, but the opposite, that we are asking this universal income for everyone, and that after that this will be the best cultural policy that we can think about, because all this self-determination, all this freedom to choose will apply both to the creators and both to the consumers, or whatever we can name, the people that is on the other side, that we don't think that they are on the other side, we think that we are on the same side. That was the point. So it was a very nice and kind of fun, let's say fun, because there were some moments of relief, because we know each other since some years, so it was nice to share ideas and time with these people. And we came across with this manifesto. Just post the link here in our chat, and this was end of April, and in the first or second week we got translations into different languages, so Italian included, French, English, and the other languages in Spain. So it was very nice, because people just freely and very nicely offered themselves to translate it. And I'm not going to read it, of course, you have it here, and some not. I think all of the things that we wanted to share through this manifesto were in this point that Emmanuel shared in the beginning. I was saying like yes with my head all the time. So I think that the main points are these ones, this capacity of saying no, and this idea of that this is just a pavement, just a basic, I mean, the word basic is very important, just the basic thing. And then we need to change, I think, that everything. But this is the first, this could be the first step to make people available and healthy enough to fight for the other things that we have to fight for, that are absolutely all the other aspects of our life. So we are against this corporativization that we were mentioning. So we try to add more people in this conversation that ended into the manifesto. And it was very nice to see how, I don't know how it works in your countries, sorry, but here for the last years, we have new, recently created unions for musicians, for example. The visual arts is being like, well, they are self-organizing in a non, closed mind way. So it was very nice to talk with these people. So what we did is that some of these people are part of the cooperative, so they were in the conversation. And then after we launched the manifesto, we did like 2-3 meetings with no drinks this time, with different collectives or the cooperatives and so on. And one of the things that we agreed was that, well, we need to talk to our European colleagues, because we are sure that they are facing the same problems and they are thinking the same. I mean, we are not that special, or our situations are a bit different, but not that different. So I'm very happy to be here now, because we are doing what we said we were going to do. So yeah, we are more than open and happy to follow the conversation. And also we think that is something that we have to do also, because what we came across with a sentence that was very nice, and of course now I cannot remember it perfectly, but it was something like, from the cultural or the artistic world, we are working in a more open cultural term, but it's the same. Let's be useful, and let's try to help from our specificity. Let's not fight for our specificity, but from what makes us special. And we said, yeah, we are comfortable with it, because sometimes I even sometimes feel like, not shame, but sometimes difficult to tell another people that you met for the first time that you work in the cultural world, because suddenly they suppose that you're a glamorous person, or you have a lot of money and you are partying all the time. And I don't know, it's not the opposite, of course. I do party, but as the same as my neighbors that work in other fields. So we were like coming from this, and I think that is my feeling is that it's a flavor that is here in this conversation. So I don't know, I have used my 10 minutes, but I think it's enough. Then if you have more questions about the, I don't know, details about the manifesto, we can talk later. But yes, I think that it's a conversation and I don't know, movement, campaign, whatever you want to call it, that we need to. It is already existing, of course. This was the other thing that we were very aware, that we are not discovering UBI, of course, but that was a moment. It's like the same. I think mechanism that now with Black Lives Matter, it's the momentum. So let's use it and let's be part of it. So I think that's it. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. We are glad that you are in the loop now, and definitely this conversation needs to be continued. Then our next guest is Salvatore, and Salvatore is a researcher. He's part of I don't know if I can call it like a group or a permanent seminar called POE, Politics, Ontology and Ecology. And so he is a scholar in political ecology and is an activist for climate justice. And we asked him to be here with us in order to go deeper into one peculiar aspect of UBI. So the ecological implications of UBI, because for example, now with Anna, we made with Anna, but also with Wouter, we made some points about like artistic and cultural implications. But I think that it's also very important to underline the, let's say, ecological implications. So thank you very much, Salvo, and I leave the word to you.
Thanks. Thanks for your invitation. I'll try to be schematic and stay in 8 minutes. Can you hear me? I think that UBI and climate justice and ecological justice are strictly connected. This means that basic income, climate justice, overcoming of patriarchy, decolonizing our society are all the same struggle. Even it seems simple to demonstrate this strictly relationship, I have to say that in the basic income debate, this relation is isn't much visible. There is a research of McNeil and Bibert that demonstrate that only the 1% of published academic journal articles on basic income have addressed the ecological problems. And this year, in 2020, no one. I think that is quite interesting because effectively related to the experience of the pandemic, that we haven't new research that try to demonstrate how this simple relationship now is really more important. In a more wider sense, we could say that we could assume that the debate on UBI is not a debate on ecological problems, is not a debate on climate justice, and that this lack of debate, this lack of presence of ecological problems is strictly related to the idea of capitalism that is present inside that debate. So the classical idea that is not a problem of capitalism, but is a problem of different stages, different periods of capitalism. The passage between the industrial capitalism to the consumer capitalism. So let's assume this position and let's start saying that effectively there is a strict relationship between consumption and basic income, and that we may demonstrate that change in consumption a direct effect on environment. The first, the change in food consumption affects all the chain of food production. A case that we could use to demonstrate this change is the Bolsa Famiglia. I know that is not effectively a universal basic income. It's quite different because it's a Brazilian experience related to the access to institute in different schools and university structures. But in that case, the change in the income of different families changed also the quality of the environment, changed their choose in consumption, and demonstrate another little thing that I like to use to assume a political ecology standing point. That is that survival affects environment. Wider high quality of life is more sustainable for biosphere. Survival is directly related to ecological problem and to the production of ecological problems. And the exit from survival is also a change in the relationship between human communities and biosphere and ecological communities. The second point is that obviously poor need to face environmental problems and need to face directly climate change effects. And they need to face these problems generally without the same instruments, the same tools of middle classes and upper classes. A change in the structure and in the need for survival is directly related to the so-called resistance, so-called reply capacity of rebuilding communities after ecological problems. So I posed myself, after your question, a problem about the debate. If in the academic debate, this quite obvious relationship is not so much debate, how in political, institutional debate is present this relationship? And it's really strange because there is a difference. So we know that, first of all, there is a great difference between the North debate and the South debate. This problem is clear, is present in the North debate, in the global North. And there is a difference between Europe and the United States in last year. A difference present in the position assumed by, for example, Andrew Yang, former candidate for the presidential campaign this year, exponent of the Democrat Party. A classical leftist figure of political candidate of the American left, of the United States left, that proposed effectively a form of universal basic income, and proposed this form inside a debate on climate change effects. In Europe, the Green New Deal project, for example, do not consider the presence of a problem of income. In the same way, the critics and alternative project on Green New Deal try to insert the problem of the social change, but are more related to the degrowth debate. So to stay inside our 8-10 minutes, I think that we could change our standpoint using effectively starting by this debate, the debate on UBI and the debate of on arts, and on the change in the production, the idea of production, not only the idea of the consumption, referring to the starting point of this debate. For example, referring to the way in which UBI could support a shift in the perception and also in the building of the autonomous sphere. The one Gortz called it the autonomous sphere. because the autonomous sphere effectively is a sphere in which production and consumption are quite different and do not affect environment. Use biosphere in a different way. And this is another demonstration inside the South American communities in several cases in which communities talked about the universal income as a way to rebuild the relationship with biosphere because is a way to realize a sort of new liberation of the power of labor and to change the idea and the structure of labor in the direction of a the technical term is that I totally disagree is a sustainable way, but it's clear that it's in a way that is near to the way biosphere function, not the way of the functioning of capitalism and the scheme of production of late capitalism. The other standpoint of a political ecology is related to Henri Lefebvre. It's also that this typical expression of autonomy is also a typical expression of the difference between the art and the way art produced and the capitalist production. Because effectively try to present in another form the opposition between the production of commodities and the production of artwork, and also the idea that production of space in our society is a wall, and in this wall is effectively the space of the socio-ecological relationships, is the space of the social relationships, and is also the space of action of labor. I hope I stayed inside. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Salvo. Yeah, the next intervention is by Marina Donatone and Anna. Oh, you are alone. So, under the pandemic, some weeks ago, in Italy was born, I think, a really wonderful platform in the art scene and performing arts scene researchers in Italy called Campo Innocente. And I think they launched a very wonderful campaign with this no. So like a toolkit or a training how to say no. And I think it's very connected also with what Salvo was saying, no? How we can take the opportunity of this stop, of this space to say no, in order to conceive another ecology, another way to stay together and produce also in art. And especially Campo Innocente, the last week read the Manifesto in a very wonderful stage in Rome, in which I think rised up this power of a decolonizing and a transfeminist perspective and point of view in order also to reclaim the issue of income, in order really to make visible what is invisible in terms of exploitation. So I'm very glad to have them here. And Marina, please.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for all the interventions so far. Il Campo Innocente is a group of artists, researchers, performing art workers who gathered in order to draw attention in Italy on issues of violence, ableism, sexism, racism, colonialism, homo, lesbo, bi, transphobia, and precariousness that still survive in the art world. And we wanted to put such issues at the center of the debate, and not only use such issues as themes or inspirations. And our first action as Il Campo Innocente was an open letter that used the case of FAB in order to draw attention on such issues, on harassment, violence, sexism in the field of art, which still suffer from very much patriarchal based dynamics in Italy. And also because most of the institutions in Italy didn't really take word after all the struggles also of the movements of the We Too and of Non Una Di Meno as well in Italy and abroad. So since Jan Fabre is still pretty much welcomed, produced and invited artists in Italy in most of the venues, we wanted to use with this open letter this case in order to start to raise attention on such themes. Our second action, as Emanuele was mentioning, it was an emergency kit we commonly brought in case of sudden reopening of theaters and art centers. It was a publication that we symbolically put on the online. On the 15th of June was the reopening of theaters and art centers in Italy, in order to symbolically ask for some more time to reflect on the conditions of this reopening, on the people who could have been able to reopen. And also, yeah, we associated this kit with a social campaign, which was a series of images, a list of no's. Like we individuated some specific issues that things we to come to we were not willing to accept anymore. And we used symbolically this date in order to draw attention on the condition of this reopening, especially because yes, the recent sanitary emergency, of course, highlighted all the lacks, all the problems and the shortcomings that were already structural in Italy in terms of welfare, protection of workers, and in terms of protection of the more invisibilized subjectivities, the most fragile subjectivities. The subjectivities that also were taking also a word in the debate, and that in this moment of increasing of awareness, so many different subjectivities were taking a word, but we had the feeling that most of the institutions didn't really give space or arbitrarily excluded such issues and such voices. We would like, as Il Campo Innocente, to underline such problems of those who work in the art field, as well as the other who work in a common precarious way in other fields. We don't want, as other people were mentioning, to think in a corporative way. We don't want to think anymore the art field as an exceptional field, as a world aside. We are workers who deserve protection, for workers who deserve universal basic income, and art is by no means an exception. Even if the machine has stopped and has showed all like the problems of our system, we return to work, the one who could actually, we return to work in a system that does not really support us and that was not ready to start. So the art production system doesn't seem pretty much able in Italy to evolve and radically rethink its cultural and work policies, to take a time for research, for take care of problems, traumas, and lack of protection in terms of workers. To problematize such condition has nothing to do, again, with enhancement, a discourse of that puts art as a word aside. It's yes, we have our specificities. We have, but we as well we have a common condition of precariousness with many other sectors of workers. Il Campo Innocente hope, like in resonance with other sectors, with other workers, the right to unconditional or universal, we're gonna see income, which in our case allows Italian art to survive and to prosper, enhancing as well autonomy and the possibility of choice, and also to escape toxic and violent situation. In Italy, where such lack of forms of welfare is structural, where there is no recognition of the structural intermittence of certain jobs as the art job, where right now big part of art workers are left behind, and we know it's going to be worse and worse. We want to respond, creating transversal alliances with other sectors, asking for universal basic income. And we don't want to think corporatively, since, yeah, as we were saying, we are trying not to see our world as exceptional. We are workers, and since the art field gathers in itself so many different specificities, we experience multiplicity of contracts, especially in Italy, a multiplicity of wages, all along with different ways in which we are exploited. And this is why, while we build necessary experiments of mutualism, we claim for a universal basic income as the only way to answer to the constitutive precariousness of our common condition, and in beyond the art scene, and together with all the other exploited and invisibilized subjectivities. As a group, the next 16th of July, we're gonna be in Sant'Arcangelo with an open talk for a common building of a self-inquiry. So from the perspective of us, the workers, and all the people who are gonna come, to map the issues of violence, sexism, and precariousness. And this could also be a moment to highlight such topics like, again, violence, sexism, and precarity, and also to raise the issue of UBI with the other people who are gonna come. It's gonna be also an online talk, so you're all very welcome to join. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce Christophe and this project in Brussels called the Common Wallet, because as I said in the very beginning, I think there's many in the previous years has been many experimentation in between our community, how to share income and co-manage this distribution of wealth. For example, also in Macau, in Milano, in the Macau Art Center, I am member of. Also, we did an experimentation for 5 years, simply creating through the income of the organization a common wallet and sharing a basic income for all the participants. And for us, has been, of course, a way to establish a mutual aid in between the members and a little bit of freedom by the blackmail of jobs and whatever. But on the other side, it has been also a way to know each other, no? To speak about what's our needs, no? We already discussed many times with the Common Wallet collective in Brussels about these issues, and so I would like to pass the mic to Christophe, and Anna Rispoli also is there, in order to a little bit speak about this common wallet. And then we are going a little bit late, but I would like to invite all of us to have a little time of debate also, letting all the others. So I also invite to shrink a little bit in order to free time for the debate. So please, Anna and Christophe, if you are there.
Hi, just a technical thing. If the host could please turn on the camera of Christophe again.
Anna, your loudness is incredible. You have to turn down the volume.
A very bad Larsen. I don't know why.
Hello? Hello? Yes, maybe like this is better. Sorry for the shock. So I was, I was asking the host if you could reactivate the camera of Christophe so we can see him while he speaks. I know that it's been deactivated by the host. Voila, thank you. So we are only two now, 10 in total, part of the Common Wallet. Common Wallet is a experiment. Well, it's a practice of radical mutualization of resources, in financial resources, between 10 art workers. That means artists, but also curator and producers. And financial resources it's very simple. It's informal agreement of radical solidarity. We have one bank account that we share, 10 people, and relatively and the rest of the kids that are involved in this group. And this bank account is the place where all our income is wired to, and from this same bank account, the shared bank account, we pay all our costs, meaning all the fixed costs involving rent, mortgage, for those who are buying houses, or voilà, electricity, living costs, food, but also the costs that are more variable, and that we try not to judge, so that the costs that are linked to the personal lifestyle that each of us decide to have. So it's a very anarchist approach to sharing. Basically, we do not check what the other people are spending, but everybody has, in theory, the right to use all the money of the group. Voilà, this is a very quick introduction, and I will leave Christophe keep on the conversation, and I already excuse myself because after this presentation I will have to leave you, but thank you.
Well, thanks. I mean, now what Anna described is mostly the technicalities of it. Maybe an important point in relationship to universal basic income or unconditional basic income. Technically is quite different because it is not the idea of guaranteeing an income to people. It's just the idea of mutualizing. But I think where there might be a link is that, as Anna mentioned, it bases on radical trust, meaning that we the only checks that we do, the only control that we make is that we actually trust each other. So we trust that nobody will run away with the money. We trust that everybody will, not exaggerate, not abuse the common wallet, but we don't check. We try to spare the pain of doing this. I mean, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of administration, but it also a lot of, you could say, creates a lot of problems, also interpersonal problems. And somehow I feel that in the unconditional basic income, there is a level of that which is required, you could say, at the level of society, of saying you're not going to judge someone who decides not to do anything for still getting the universal basic income. It's in the end the idea that anybody's, as I was saying in the first intervention, anybody's living is worth it. So there's this level of trust, which I think is, you could say in the common wallet, that's what we're mainly experimenting with on a very small scale. But you feel already how putting this into practice changes the relationship to, well, income, to work, obviously, because what the agreement is that you can use more than what you earn if you need to, or you could also use less than what you earn for other people to use more, but that is not anymore the measure of things. We basically, well, we're always, we never have enough money at the end of the month, but that's just the general precarity of artists. But we do that together. So within that shared economy, it's not anymore linked to, okay, maybe I didn't work for 3 months, but that does not prevent me from actually using money if there is money. If I work a lot and I'm extremely successful, it doesn't mean I have to spend more. We try to decouple this. And what it creates is, yeah, it's a different type of relationship to work, different type of relationship to other people. So you could say in that small circle, obviously it's easier to produce, but I think it's kind of the basis, or you could say the embryo of what kind of exercise it would take us as a society to implement things as universal basic income, but also in general, a different kind of solidarity or of living together. I think, Marco, you're still muted.
Marco, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much, Christophe. I think you bring into the picture something that was not part of our conversation, which is mutualism, and also the fact that, in a way, art could be an experimental ground for mutualism, but at the same time, not an isolated space, as Campo Innocente was saying before, so that art is not somewhere else from where we live, from our world. So I think this is also an interesting contribution to the map and to the debate. So our last speaker is Gabriella Riccio. Gabriella is part of the Institute of Radical Imagination too. She's an artist, she's a researcher, and much more. And she's also part of a self-managed cultural and art space in Italy, Naples, L'Asilo. So please, Gabriella, I'm leaving the word to you before going to some, not conclusions, but to some suggestions. And of course, there is some room for questions or interventions.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone, and really thank you for all the contributions that were very interesting on this topic. Of course, we are at the beginning of a common elaboration on the issue of the relationship between art world and struggle for universal basic income. Here I'm together with Giuseppe Micciarelli and Margherita D'Andrea, who are online somehow, I don't know, in a very precarious situation on the road. But I want to share you what L'Asilo has been doing in the last months. L'Asilo was and is part of a European project called Cultural and Creative Spaces in Cities. And right before the COVID crisis, we were supposed to host one of the events of this project. Of course, the COVID starts, and we couldn't help but bring into our contribution that is from the point of view of an art and cultural centered, is mainly a common, so it's developing practices of commoning. We were part of the many voices that rose from the side of art workers, particularly struck by COVID emergency. So we elaborated a document which I posted in the chat, and which is, of course, proposing the idea. We were called to elaborate a period of on-the-field research to suggest possibilities to the European Union to include recommendations on how to imagine the use of the new programs for culture, which are being implemented in the near future. So we approached the research as an action intervention from the point of view of a common, and this study proposes practices of commons as an ecosystem for culture. And there's a section, the second section of this document, that particularly focused on imagining an approach to income. We had to reason on a very practical basis, because once again, we were called to imagine practical recommendations for the actual structure of the European Union. And as you know, European Commission can only recommend to the different member states some directions of actions, but then it's up to the single member state to implement those actions. So as we did for developing our declaration of common and civic use, like the declaration that was like, we started from the point of view of the art practice to propose a change in the system, and with the experience of l'asilo, the juridical possibility to see a legitimation of practices of commoning starts from the art field, but then extends, and we've seen it happening, extends to other fields. So as Walter was saying, we sort of use the art field as training example of practices that could then be, of course, extended to other sectors. And in this document, there is a speculation on how to link, after, of course, our experience of course, art production and taking care in a self-managed way of space. So putting together spaces and equipment, means of production and knowledge. So a form of mutualism. We propose the idea of an income of creativity and care. So this is a triggering point to, for the first time, challenge the idea to hybridize the art field with the practices of care, and of course of the impact that art has in the social sphere and on practices of democracy itself. So I won't go any longer, but I wanted to share with you this first study, and the document is available for everyone, and maybe we can extend, not to occupy too much space now in terms of time, we can of course analyze and develop together all the options that we have at stake. Of course, the idea is where do we start from with our struggle, and of course always in a non-corporative way.
Thank you very much, Gabriele. I think this is another very precious contribution to the debate. I mean, I think we do have like 10-15 minutes more, so it's time now for other people to jump in the conversation if they wish. But before leaving you, Emanuele and I would like to, we do have some suggestions about how to continue what we started today. So if there are people that want to talk, please feel free to do it now.
Yes, Marco, I see Giuseppe can jump in. Maybe it's good after me to fill in the gaps of what I've been saying right now.
Hi to everyone. I hope that you can hear me. Give me a feedback because I am in a precarious situation.
Yes, we Giuseppe can't see you, but can hear us. Giuseppe, we lost you. Hello?
Hello, here I am. Sorry, as I told you, I am in a precarious situation. I can say something?
Yes, we hear you now, go.
Okay, sorry. Very quickly, because it's difficult to add more, and I think that it's very useful to start to discuss, to confront about this topic now that we see that income claims can arrive to a concrete solution. What I want to say is start only from what we are agree a lot, that we have to use income to break the blackmail of bad work and to break the idea that to work, to survive, you have to work. These are two different things. And for the second one, so the idea that you have to work to survive, UBI is very, very helpful. In another time, we can confront about the question of universal. We can discuss about many things about that. The point is that I think that is not enough UBI if we are speaking about to break the blackmail of bad work. And I speak about bad work and not work because work can be many, many things. And I think that we have to discuss a little bit more on the care and creativity income that is arising as a claim nowadays during the pandemic moment, because what we see is that many people, and not only activists, but people that are engaged in ecological activities, or because they live in rural areas, but also artists and many others, do an invisible work. And they have an invisible expertise that in the neoliberal framework are not translated as work. Just make an example. When people do their activity in a voluntary way for social activities, and we know that many social centers, urban commons, and not only that, also association and many other organizations do activities every day for help themselves and people to live a better life. All this kind of work and of expertise is not translated into work. So in the proposal that Gabriella and I thankful her exposed before, and that I invite you to read a little bit, we proposed some kind of care and creativity income that can be complementary to the UBI, because it's the idea to give the opportunity to have an income, especially for cognitive worker. I don't speak only about artists, but also cultural workers and many other cognitive workers that may ask for 1 year of sabbatical work. It's better explained in the text, but just to give you an idea. And this year is a year that is paid for a program of there are two possibilities, or the program for self-education, because a lot of time cognitive workers cannot do their work because we are constricted to do mainstream action also in cultural research or in artistic research to survive. So this kind of income can free us to propose something that is like in the sabbatical academic model project to self-valorization of our activities, or is a care income. So it's an income where we imagine to address one host institution that can be part of our territory, can be an association, can be an occupied space, can be a lake, can be a mountain, can be many, many things. And we say in this case that for 1 year, we want to make a cognitive and practical project that is used to implement the collective use and rights that come from that kind of host institution. So I want to close here only to say that what is one of the most important things in the claim of UBI, and I am totally agree about this part, is that we want to make outside the blackmail of work some kind of work that we do daily in our social cooperation. There is, as feminist approach teach us, also another kind of work that is a care, collective care work, and we should imagine some kind of income that, I repeat, is complementary, is adding, but it's something very important that we can spread also after in different idea, not only for cognitive worker, but in a different framework also for other kind of worker, because many people all around the world do a day-by-day work for collective society, and we need to make that outside the invisibility. So take a look to that, and maybe we can speak more how to connect these claims, because it's very important that these claims don't feel them one against others, but the same against our capitalist and neoliberal model. Thank you.
Are there any other interventions? Maybe Emanuele, you can go with some final suggestions.
I would like to free the space for any suggestion. Let's use this time also for. We are still many, and I know from this black square that maybe some possible point of view from other communities and territories would be super good, even if, I mean, questions could be super, or we are quite stressed by these rules, huh?
Oh, I would like to add something, but very quickly and very briefly, because we have been, you know, speaking about UBI, but there are many other concepts and many other political urgencies that appear in our discussion. These are UBI, environment or ecology, and there is care and much more. But I also would like to say that recently the Oxford University produced a survey, and they asked, they contacted more than 12,000 European citizens, and for the more than the 70% of these people, you know, like the priorities. Now it is a recent survey. It was made, I think, in April, something like this. More than 70% of the people interviewed said that their priorities were UBI and climate justice. I mean, so I think even if as cultural workers, we do have to deal with an anthropology of cultural labor that is many times still going into hyper-identification, going into the division of very specific roles, very specific professional figures. I really think this is the good time to organize practical networks able to campaign and to produce opinion or action again around the pro-UBI and also pro-ecological justice. So one idea that we already said in our, let's say, Italian network is that there could be one moment when this possible group of people, artists, cultural workers work around UBI meet in person, and could be next September at the Venice Climate Camp. There is a Venice Climate Camp that is organized. It's the same period of the Mostra del Cinema at the Lido of Venice from the 8th to the 12th of September. And there is already like a national network of cultural workers that decided to come to the climate camp to organize a meeting and an action. So this is an invitation that we can definitely, I do live in Venice, I'm in some way part of the organization. So this is definitely an invitation to open to all of you, with the hope to continue this discussion, also to meet in person at a certain point.
Yes, Thank you, Marco. If I can just add another thing, like is a level that sort of triggers my mind is the level of the scale. Like on a European level, we have some countries that have already implemented UBI and other countries that have not. And this creates really this equality among the aimed equality among all European citizens. If we should, alas, take a Eurocentric approach to the question. But when we compose our struggles together, I think that the level of the struggle does make a difference, because as we know, yeah, once again, on a European level, institutions are responding to the member states. So how to compose our actions and struggles together on a European level, and also claim for breaking this inequality among the countries and among the citizens, for example, could be another point.
Yeah. I mean, on this point, as I said in the very beginning, would be super useful to use the already existing network here in this room in order maybe to enlarge also this network, because, yeah, we are from Italy, Greece, Spain, Germany, Belgium, probably some from UK.
Turkey, like also extra European crowd.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, would be I think would be super good if maybe each of us has any contact with already existing groups in other countries. Could be one point. So I would suggest also to use Institute of Radical Imagination and this iteration on FOR UBI as like an archive and a map of this network. So practically we could publish the result of this conversation through the channel of the Institute, and we could use our contacts in order to enlarge this mapping, maybe inviting them for another meeting online or directly in Venice, as Marco proposed. The second point could be to edit this document that I copy and paste again. I can do right now in the chat for the ones that didn't got it. This document of like an FOR UBI manifesto from this conversation. If we could edit like a synthesis of editing a statement, no, could be I think a good goal. And then also a little bit of bibliography, or like a sort of syllabus of our collective knowledge and intelligence around this topic could be even an important tool. And so I would propose this three simple aim. So enlarge this network for the next meeting, covering more point of view and experience on the international level. Second, if we can do the effort of the co-editing of a statement, an FOR UBI manifesto, using this doc, so we can work on the same text. And third, maybe if we have time and the need, we could also, create a little bit a repository of reference on this issue. I don't know if there's any other proposal, but I would also invite you to have a practical proposals regarding the agenda and the tools. And then we can even go to dinner.
I think it's great, these three proposals.
Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, I think that those three proposals are great. So yeah, we are in.
Okay.
Marina, what do you think?
Yes, for us as well. We are, of course, in to continue to dialogue and discuss together on such issues. Yes.
Great. So to be continued, as they say. Okay. So, and thank you very much for joining us. And I think, ciao Ilenia, hello.
Yeah, this moment of the face.
Yes, last face moments to say goodbye.
Thank you very much for joining us. And
thank you for
we will continue the conversation and hopefully also the action and suggestions. So thank you very much.